an open meeting.
So moved.
Second. Move to second, declare open meeting, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Notification of the Open Meetings Act is posted on the door or the back of the room. Roll call, Chance?
Yep.
Wyatt?
Yes.
Mike is excused for the time being. Myself, yes. Debbie?
Yes.
And Melissa?
Yep.
Nobody ever.
All right, number 6, approve the agenda. I don't believe we have any changes to make to that, so. Take a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
Okay, second.
Represented.
I'll second.
Second to approve the agenda, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Number 7, the consent agenda. Start on that with the minutes of last month. Those all look good. You can move on into the financials next page. No questions there, we can move on to the claims then.
That power washer for $4,560 is, we have a grant that'll reimburse us for that expense.
Help with the coach.
That will be for the coach and the FFA use, greenhouse floor and other equipment that Mr. Commit sees fit.
Yeah, you see the 2 months of special, or DSU there. Didn't have last month.
Yeah, last month was like 3,000, so.
No questions on that, and I guess we'll take a motion then to accept the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a
I'll
second.
second.
We have a second to accept the consent agenda, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Any student presentation tonight? Okay. Anybody that wants to speak tonight? Okay. We'll move on then to discussion items. 10, the food service report. How about it?
I'll come up here so you can hear me a little better. Good evening all. As we round out the school year in my first year as food service manager, I would like to share some thoughts. I have thoroughly enjoyed my first year here and have learned quite a bit. I have enjoyed bringing new ideas from brunch for lunch to bringing back our Thanksgiving feast. I love hearing positive feedback from the community on this. I have attended some meetings on Farm to School and will continue to attend more next fall. One idea I would like to implement for next school year is a Nebraska Thursdays program. This will allow us one Thursday a month where we will highlight something locally grown here in Nebraska. This can be local fruit, vegetables with the possibility of local beef or meat depending on regulations with the grant. There are a few things that we are working through before the end of this school year. First, I am going to start looking for a part-time employee for next year. I have 2 employees that are looking to reduce hours instead of retiring. Secondly, as soon as school is dismissed, construction will begin on our new vent system. that has been in the works since the damage to last summer's storm. We will also be installing new drains, specifically with backflow prevention. This construction will most likely be done simultaneously with the vent install. The only one challenge I have encountered is the many hours of paperwork to make sure we're meeting all state and federal regulations. I would love to see us make some technology upgrades to save us time and act as a double check to make sure all regulations are being met. This will take some planning and prep work in the beginning, but in the long run would be a great investment. You guys have any questions for me?
What kind of technology upgrades?
There's we do what's called production records every day, and essentially I'm spending 45 minutes writing a sheet of paper that says how much we've made, how much we've fed, all those things. With a computer system, there's like software that you type it in, and like, let's say we have hot ham and cheese, once a month. It'll automatically load those things into the system, and then you just make minor changes as needed.
So it's just automated, just
Yeah.
a lot less
Yep.
actual time you gotta spend entering.
Yep. So,
She was trained by Linda, and Linda was
there's a lot of papers. There's many papers.
and meticulous with the pen and the notepad.
So I've worked.
So you have a program in mind?
Yes, I have a few, yep. There's,
Good.
some different options depending on what, like, if we use all Apple or Mac or whatever you use that way. So,
I'm sure it's a lot easier to get report, if you wanna make reports and
Mhm.
things like that too.
Yeah, yep.
That's-
And then it'll easily like generate a flag, like, because we have to serve a different serving of vegetables every day of the week. It'll throw a flag if something is missing or something that we would need to know, to make sure all of for reimbursable meals, to make sure everything's being met.
It's 2024, I'm surprised we don't already have that.
It's a little easier.
So,
Well, Dave, thanks for doing a nice job.
thank you.
We appreciate your work.
Obviously, when we knew Linda was gonna retire a couple of years ago, we're like, oh, good Lord, please provide somebody. So we're very fortunate, very, very lucky to have Linda. She's a very good manager, very good boss, and has dealt with a lot of things with regard to our kitchen, the facility itself, and has really rolled well with that. Today, we lost our garbage disposal. And so our kitchen can't operate without a garbage disposal, so they've had to go to paper trays, and we've had to do that a few times, just a flexibility issue that her and her staff manage. Creates more waste, but we didn't have any choice to do that, so. Mr. Schmidt has done some things with some student surveys as well, to get some feedback. We can't always do what kids want, they don't understand the mountain of regulations that LeVay has to follow. I as well just generally say, LeVay, just feed the kids, just feed them and fill them up, whatever we can do to feed them and fill them up. Well, would you believe there are some prohibitions to really just feed them and fill them up? I mean, it's quite meticulous, so she manages that really well, continues to learn, I think, quite a bit about what those rules and regs are, and also just the variety of grants and opportunities that get forwarded that I see as well, that I check with LeVay. I mean, you can't give your time to all of them, because it's just not possible. But you always want to find which ones have the variety of strings attached to them, because a good thing is often too good to be true. You're like, hey, that looks great, and then all of a sudden they say, well, okay, but now we want you to do.
And I'm currently looking into a different, or ESU is offering working coincidingly along with Cisco for another distributor, could offer some discounts that way, so we'll see on that.
Thank you.
What are some of the things that you've learned down at Nebraska Farm to Table?
I guess our school has already started to implement like farm to school, and it's something we don't think of. In this fall, we usually have someone that'll bring in watermelon. Lila Rayford is a huge one that does that, and that's a farm to table. But we don't highlight it as that, and sometimes it's as simple as that, just highlighting the fact that we are already bringing in things that are local.
Sure.
So-
Will there be any point where we could get beef from someone locally, or pork or anything like that?
Yes, a lot of schools are looking to do more of like I know, Wayne does like a donation, so, whatever local meat is donated to the school and then prepared, so that's a thought and an idea, if the farmers are willing to donate that.
And we have to have a USDA certified butcher.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
obviously to prepare them, and it's generally, it's always just ground beef, right? I mean, that's your only, is
No,
that for the
nope.
most part? Oh,
The
okay.
roast would be,
Some do porks.
Oh, so you can,
Yeah,
you shredded pork and,
some have went, like Albion does this every Thursday in their school, but they've done like bison even.
Oh.
So there's a lot of things that are possibilities, it's just slowly implementing them to where it's not an overwhelming task all at once.
On the technology that you would like how, do you have any numbers about how much that's gonna cost, or?
I don't, I'm, from what I've read into, maybe a couple thousand at most.
and that would be for the laptop program?
Yes,
Cause we'll have our budget meeting or budget hearing starting in July, correct?
and I can have a finalized number for that, for what it will cost.
Yep, so we can
Yep.
hopefully have that going before school
That's-
starts.
that's
Yeah,
pretty small percentage for what our overall food service budget would be, but.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, just help things run smoother and.
It's probably like a recurring subscription or something like that.
There's ones that you can purchase an entire, like, and there's no subscription, or there's ones that do updates and make sure you're meeting, if any regulations have changed with a subscription. So,
Well, now would also be a great way to keep track of, like, when the milk was being, there was some cases of spoiled milk and stuff that wasn't your fault, or wasn't the school's fault.
Mhm.
It's a great way to keep track of that, so if we need to find a different distributor, or however.
and currently in that process.
Yep, so we're out for bid right now.
Yes.
And we've,
Yes.
we've gone with Highland for years and years and years, but she's shopping around a little bit more
Yeah,
than what we've done in the past.
yeah, we've had spoiled, yeah, issues, so. Well, thank you for your time.
Yep,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move on to number 11, we've got committee reports. First up would be the policy committee. Anybody want to let us know what you guys talked about tonight?
We had a committee meeting on Tuesday night, discussing a social media policy would be for the staff of school. We're just beginning the conversation, so I don't know how much we want to disclose this evening, but just kind of keeping our kids safe from things adults can get into on Facebook or other social media sites.
So I put in your folder, one that would be new language, and that's titled, or number 40301. This is a draft of some language that I put together from our policy service from NASB, and also from a couple of superintendents that shared policies with me. Employee use of social networks is the title of that. So we currently don't have something that is precise to teachers or staff members, and any prohibitions or behaviors with regard to social networking and social media. So 40301 is draft language that probably would be good for you to kind of read through before next month. It's a 2-month process to adopt a new policy, so a first and a second reading. Whether, our policy committee will probably meet again and decide next step, or to go ahead and recommend 403 as is, or with edits to that language. So we'll have this on the agenda next month for the full board membership to share ideas about 403. 60606 is also, I put a copy of that. That is existing policy, but rather than have you look through your binder, I just went ahead and made you a copy, put it in your folder. 60606, acceptable use of computers, technology, and the internet. That is for faculty and students' use of school networks and school hardware. So, there's also a 60606E1, and it's a form that all employees have to sign, have in their folders, that they've read 60606. So that is in policy language, that they have to acknowledge receipt of this policy language. So that's part of their orientation that Kelly does with them, with all new employees, is they have to sign that disclosure. So they're not the same. There's a little bit of a minor amount of overlapping language in these two. But I think policy committee would just like you to look carefully at 40301. And go ahead and highlight, mark up, take notes, whatever sounds reasonable, acceptable, prudent. And if there's anything in there that seems, well, okay, is there a different way to say this, is this part necessary? Or if there might be something missing, if you're like, well, okay, we also should, and again, it's designed to protect our staff from
Protect our staff and our students
at-risk
and our
behavior.
community.
Yeah, because if our staff, what our staff does, even on their own time, on their own private social network, can be not good for our school and for our students.
Yeah, there've been some examples of that in the news.
Yeah, I think that's what precipitated the idea of, hey, do we have something specific to our faculty's private time, private use of private social media? And we really don't. There's just a little bit in 60606, but nothing that not too much. Now, there's certainly language in teachers' contracts about appropriate behavior, very generic, and Professional Practices Commission for all state employees. There's language in there as well, but policy generally just makes it more clear and more precise to your district and outlines school board's expectations, because you own the contract, essentially. You control teacher contracts, so, or staff contracts, certified contracts, I should say. So would that be right, Melissa, is essentially look through 40301 carefully
Yep.
between now and Deb, would that be right?
Yeah.
And
Discuss,
it'll
take
be
a
a
month.
discussion item again next month, and maybe on the agenda for several months. If you continue to move in the direction to add a policy.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Budget committee was the other committee that met. Basically, we met to just discuss classroom salaries, which we're gonna be talking about later. Get to that, I guess, when we get there, that action. That'll take us to number 12, review policy 706 series.
Okay, 706 is all about district expenditures. And that's a little more relevant this time of year as, teachers are doing this budget requests, whether it's through the cooperative purchase ESU or outside of that. So 70601 is precise at purchasing procedures, receiving bids for construction. In all the time I've been here, I think we've really only done that 2 different times, and that was for an ESCO to get an energy service company to do our first major HVAC project. But there isn't any language that's changed with regard to statute on purchasing procedures. So I don't have any language change recommendations for 70601. One of them, petty cash, is, that language is relevant and up to date, I believe, as well. That's maybe accounts that, Kelly's about the only person who put eyes on that for the most part. So, and I don't even know if we use that on a monthly basis. Some months we do, some months we don't. Would that be fair to say?
Yep,
Kelly?
absolutely. We didn't last month, but we
Yeah.
did this month.
Do you see any language on that policy that is outdated or inaccurate, inappropriate?
Nope, that's all correct.
Okay, so I don't think we have any recommendations for anything in that policy. Bidding procedures is somewhat related to purchasing procedures. There's language that overlaps a little bit. And suspension and debarment is a federal expenditure, required policy about we can't contract and give federal grant funds to certain companies that might be suspended or debarred, and we find out through the SAM website, it's been irrelevant to us since I've been here, but although when we did have ESSER dollars, there were a few more layers of accountability with how those funds would be spent that we learned about, Davis Bacon being one of them.
I don't have them. If they don't highlight for this.
Yeah, you just have
It just skips.
01, 02, 03, 07.
Okay. I like
Yeah, it looks like it's been a while since we've been to those 2016 last time, so.
Get to towards the back of the book.
Yeah.
Start.
Any questions on that? Okay. All right. Moving on to number 13, board development, this one. That was page 52 and 53 in the book.
So I also included in your file, a copy of Rule 10. There are 92 separate rules from the Department of Ed that govern the operation of schools in Nebraska, both public and private. There are 92. Rule 10 is one of them, and is probably, I mean, if there was any particular rule that you would keep handy, and that's the reason I three-hole punched it, is maybe you just put it in your binder. It's the minimum operation for accreditation for public schools. So the very basic rules that all public schools must meet to be accredited. So everything from teaching and administrator certification, clock hours, instructional units, the amount of minutes that we have for content areas, required instruction, required curriculum, required assessments, accountability procedures, so very minimum rules. So when we talk about sometimes snow days, for example, people say, do you have enough snow days? And I repeatedly say, it's not about days, it's about hours. You have to have 1,032 in the elementary and 1,080 hours. It's hours. Well, that's in Rule 10, the amount of hours that you must have scheduled on your calendar. So, so I gave you a copy of Rule 10, minus the standards, because that's another 190 pages. So you only have 32 pages. Because that's relevant to page 52 and 53, you know, the assurance statement. That's essentially a Kyle and Jen annual document to the Department of Ed that assures the Department of Ed, it's a self-regulating document. We tell them we are meeting Rule 10 guidelines. If you're not, you're supposed to identify and say what your plan is, and then you just upload that every year. Since I've been here, I don't think we've ever been out of compliance. It wouldn't be unusual for somebody to be. So for example, we're looking for an industrial technology teacher. So if we don't find one, or we assign somebody out of that endorsement, we could potentially be out of compliance in Rule 10. And we would tell them in our assurance statement, hey, here's the circumstance, and here's our plan. That's all they care about. They just want to, make sure that you have a plan. Now, if you have the same thing every year, they'll say, well, aren't you moving forward on this plan? So the assurance statement is just an annual document that generally your principals manage and get the superintendent and upload it to the portal, or you guys do. I think you can view my login information. So, Nebraska Frameworks for Continuous Improvement, that's a 5-year cycle. 5-year cycle, you have a visit every 5 years. We had one in 21. So, and you go through another cyclical school improvement process with your staff. And again, that's generally led by your teacher leaders, your principals. And then a little bit of language about board expectations and involvement in goals, academic achievement. School boards are as involved as they want to be in those things. But more times than not, you have your principals will report out about student achievement, student behavior, student demographics, all those things. Your annual report. And we've got a little extension about this coming up in the principal's reports, because occasionally the state will come out, they'll say, thanks for sending your assurance statement. And occasionally they'll say, but we're gonna come and make an assurance visit. That's when they will want to actually sit at a table with the school leaders and essentially go through Rule 10 and ask you for bits and pieces of evidence that you are meeting those standards. And we just had our first one in almost 20 years last week, that first visit. And Kyle and Jim will talk a little more about that in a little bit.
So last year, we took a look at the handbooks. Was it just the high school handbooks, or was it elementary too? And that was a part of that. They took a look at that. They were happy with that. Everything's good there? Okay. Is there anything that we need to take a look at again this year before school starts up in the fall with the handbooks?
We haven't talked about it too much yet, but we will always revisit it and then bring those recommendations to you guys.
The handbooks get evaluated essentially every year, and some years there's minimal adjustments, but they go to the principals, send them to teachers. Teachers generally don't look at handbooks anymore than anybody else, but,
Sure.
but, okay, is there something in here, and generally is there anything in here that says we're doing that we're really not? And a lot of handbook language is grounded in policy, but otherwise it's just generally day-to-day operations, right? But, and some other general guidelines that board may want included, families may want included, but, we ask teachers to help us with them every year, and they get varying levels of feedback, but yes, they will come to the board in June or July, more likely July, for you to give your stamp of approval or ask for edit for the August meeting, is routinely how that timeline goes.
And I assume that that's all based on this too, with the Rule 10, they're all kind of tied together,
Mhm.
correct?
Mhm.
So is that assurance visit like a random thing, or do they just pick, or is there a reason why they?
Well, the department has been really shorthanded, not for the past 20 years, so when they called me early in this calendar year and said, hey, Darren, we need to come visit your school. I said, we just had 2 years ago, we just had our school improvement visit. They're like, no, this isn't the school improvement visit, this is a Rule 10 visit. I've never been part of one. So I wasn't fully aware that they are supposed to do this routinely. Now, there's nothing in Rule 10 that says X amount of years they need to come out. They just do it as they can. But there's 244 districts, right? And we'd be a simple one. He did 2 the day he came to us. But imagine doing a Rule 10 visit for Norfolk or for, think of OPS or LPS. So it just finally came up. We gotta get out into the schools. We gotta get out of the office in Lincoln and into the schools, which we like, to be honest with you. We like to have them come out and see our schools. Because then they get to go back to Lincoln, to their cubicles, talk to their colleagues and say, gosh, we really like what we saw. It's good to see teachers in action. It's good to visit with administrators. It's good to be around kids. So exactly how Plainview's ping pong ball came up in the lottery, that, okay, now it's time. But he said, Darren, we haven't been to Plainview since '02, according to our records. So I was looking through the files Mr. Alt left, which I still have. And this would have been before him even, but I thought maybe if Mr. Betterman left them for Mr. Ham, we left them for Mr. Alt. just to see if there's anything that would give me some, okay, this is what it looked like at that time. But it was a very good visit. He was here for 2 hours. It was good to talk through, and Colin Jim will talk about it a little more. I think, sure seemed sincere. He had a few things to say about us that he was really, really impressed with, so.
So it's exciting to hear.
Good visit. Yeah, it was. I mean, it's just reassuring, especially when our bosses from NDE come and say, Plainview Public Schools looking good.
Should have that out of the way then for a few more years.
Yeah, I doubt it'll be 20 before they come back.
All right. We'll move on then to the action items. Number 14, discuss and take possible action on accepting certified teacher resignation. I think we've got one from Carissa Pettit in here.
I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Carissa Pettit at the end of the current contract year.
I'll second that.
Sadly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very sad that she taught my boys. She's a great teacher.
Okay, then it's been moved and seconded to accept the resignation of Carissa Pettit at the end of its current contract year. Myself, yes. Wyatt?
Yes.
Chance?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Okay, motion carried 5-0. I'll move to number 15. Discuss take possible action on setting the classified wages for 24-25. And, you guys got the most recent copy of that in your packet there. Basically, we're looking at 2.5% raise across the board, along with some that have their longevity increases coming as well. The budget committee in our meeting kind of decided a lot of the paraeducators are all very similar. We don't have anybody that's been here a really long time, but there was a couple that were maybe a little bit out of whack compared to their time here as to what their wage was, because we raised it up to $15 an hour for everybody. A few of them got a little bit out of whack there. We just changed a couple, just trying to make it, those that have been here longer, their wage is a little bit higher. Or if somebody has a little extra education, that kind of accounts for some of that wage being higher too. That was only a couple of them. Otherwise, everybody else is just at a 2.5%. Like I said, you can see the longevity column. Those are getting that extra 1%, 2%, 1.5%, depending on where they're at. You guys got anything to add to that?
Nope, pretty much said it all. It's, the couple adjustments that we made outside of the 2.5%. It's tough to keep things fair, but those are two that kind of stuck out to us anyway, that felt like maybe they were deserving of just a quick little bump. That's it.
So I anticipate possibly bringing to you before August, we have some paras that have recently earned some continuing education and certification that's specific to their assignment with us. So all of our paras, Kyle and Jen do a great job of providing professional development for our paras. Not every school does that. Now ESU has a great program, we take advantage of that, among a couple other minor things that we provide for our paraprofessionals. But we have some paras that have, at their own time and their own expense, have earned some, again, continuing education certification, or even substitute certification, which would put them in a position to earn a better rate if we need a para to be a sub, which isn't always our go-to, because if you take a para and make a sub out of them on a particular day, we're without a para. And we can't go a day without, and we don't want to go a day without a para, because they're serving kids and serving teachers as well, and we don't have para subs. But so I may ask you, because I know I've got a couple of paras that have, on their own time and expense, have achieved some levels of certification. So may ask you to revisit one or two and consider an extra little percent or two, a bump, or whatever you think is reasonable prior to, that'd be September payroll, so we've got some time. But for now, this is what I think, the budget committee is recommending.
August period.
August.
Classified starts.
Classified starts in August, so, yeah.
Thank you, 2.5%. I was telling these guys that the committee thought there was maybe a couple pairs that got a little behind when we moved things up to 15. So just to, related to time spent here, or education, make just a couple adjustments on this, a couple of them.
I'll make a motion to approve the classified wages for the 24-25 school year as presented.
Second.
Okay, yes, moved and seconded to accept classified salaries for 24-25. Vote, Deb?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Chance?
Yes.
Wyatt?
Yes.
Mike?
I'm just gonna abstain because I wasn't here for the conversation, so.
Myself, yes. Motion passed 5-0.
And I'm sorry, I should have said this before you voted, but it's less than 0.5% on the levy based on last year's valuation, what this increase would be as an expense to the district.
Okay. We'll move then on to item 16, which is discuss and take possible action on approving esports as a club activity for 7-12 students. Do we have some more information on that?
Yeah, in your folder, you should have some information that I think is much of the presentation that Mrs. Jackett made last month. Sent you a link today that maybe you'd had time to take a look at and just see the formalized process that's in place, statewide. This would just be a club minimal expense to the district, although it does open the door for a proposal in the future for district expenses with regard to maybe sponsor payment or equipment. As I talked to several districts, Wayne, Elkhorn Valley, Stanton, a few regionally that have an esports, they all do something a little different. Some are like, hey, it's on your own. We'll provide the space. And some are, we want them to all have good equipment, same equipment. We pay an extra duty rate at the bottom of the scale, which is generally about 1% of base, but about like $400. But so, I would anticipate there would be some expense in the future, minimal compared to obviously our other NSA sponsored activities.
How many kids did you say you thought you'd have out? Do you have any idea?
I have about 30 interested right now.
30?
Mm-hmm.
How many computers do you need to?
So when they compete, most are 5-on-5, so we just have to, at like a minimum, or even maximum 5 computers, because they would take turns per match.
And Wayne only has 8 on the same side.
We currently have 0 computers that'll work on him, is that right?
Oh, it's not the computer so much, it's the, you just basically have a monitor to a great degree.
So they said that the Macs that we have in our elementary computer lab would get us started, but they're not built for the type of, like the technology you need to run like the games and stuff. But they would get us started.
Okay.
Were all those schools on I hopped on that website real quick and looked. Is it like Wausau was on there? Do they have a team yet, or was it just they're in the process of getting one started? I think Wausau and Verdigris were both on there.
I know Verdigris, they just started theirs after Christmas, so they were just spring. So Wausau could have very well been spring. When I started doing a lot of my research, that was still before Thanksgiving. So I know there were some that were just getting started, and Verdigris was one of those that just started this spring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just looking if there was any local schools that were
Mhm.
getting. They didn't have anything on their page or anything like that. It just had their name.
So are these kids gonna practice at home, or, I mean, if you got 5 computers and you got 30 kids and you're trying to practice, that's not gonna work very well.
So not all games are on, the computers. There are like Nintendo Switches, PlayStations also. And I know, talking to the kids, there's 3 seasons, and they don't have to participate each season depending on what other activities they're in. So I highly doubt I'll have like all 30 of them at once.
Would we be able to do it like this next year as an experiment, like they did when we started bowling, instead of just jumping in? Cause I'm still on the fence about it. We just listened to Jay about the algorithms and all that. If we're doing gaming at night, and I'm sure at home if they were like, they enjoy it, I'm not sure about it.
This first year we'd be competing against other schools, is that right? I mean, we're not just doing it
Mhm.
in-house, it's.
Yep, it'd be against other schools.
Now, when the board decided to take on bowling, how did that process go? Because that was an experimental also, right? Or we had a grace period?
Yeah, I look back, that was August 2020 where the board approved bowling. Prior to that, they had, no affiliation whatsoever with the school. They just kind of did their thing. They were a club, and it was all outside of
Yeah,
school
a
completely.
club.
So once the NSAA sanctioned it, that just completely, I don't think we had any request prior to that date for the school to embrace a Plainview High School bowling team. It wasn't until it became sanctioned, because most people were perfectly comfortable with the club setup that the state had for bowling. And I think some people probably thought, that's better than the NSAA getting involved. But, here we are at this point. So I don't recall any conversation prior to that summer of 2020, because I think it was probably approved in the spring of 2020 by the NSAA, and then schools across Nebraska over the course of the next 3 months, and again, we did in August, said, well, okay, we'll, if you've got the facility and you've got the kids and
They were all established already.
it's all, yeah, it really was, we just assumed the expense, and then the liability, responsibility, eligibility. I don't know of any schools that said no, I'm sure some did at that time. And I suppose bowling's been I don't think we have any regrets on that decision. It's, we wish we had better facility and 30 kids out.
So am I right in saying this is like bowling, they could be on this team and still be on a
Correct.
athletic
Mhm.
team too?
Correct.
Same time.
Because this is an all-year club.
It's more similar to FFA and FCCLA, where you can participate at certain times or you can pull back at certain times. So if they're heavy in the basketball and they don't want to play during the winter season, that's fine. But if they're not a real track fan and they'd rather play golf, they have more time to play video games, then that's something they can do too.
But they could do both.
And they could do both if they wanted to. Yep.
And
So
then-
really, they're just asking for a space and providing supervision for them versus going home and playing for no reason, I guess.
What age group are we gonna, like,
It's 7-12.
7 to 12? I agree with Ms. Jensen, I'm not 100% on board, but I also am young enough to realize that when I was in school, my mom and dad told me that those video games weren't gonna get you anywhere in life, and I have kids that are graduating with me that are making all kinds of money designing video games. So, I guess my point is the world's changing.
I know a couple guys that make pretty good money testing video games too.
Yeah, and I mean, when we were kids, that was like, everybody never thought it would take off.
So are we proposing right now, the only cost to the district is the $100 a year? Is that what we're saying right now? Or
No,
are
because you have to
we
pay the
gonna?
coach.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Melissa,
Are we
do
gonna pay
we-
a coach? Are we gonna upgrade equipment?
Can, if the board approves this, do we have everything we need?
We can, cause we can use our computers
Kids can use their
and
own-
kids will bring their own Switches or PlayStations, cause we know we got them, yeah.
So I noticed that too, one of the schools I mentioned, I think, where they're like, okay, you're on your own, And then they did realize that, well, okay, we need to provide consistent equipment, newer equipment maybe, because kids will have, some kid will have a new this and another kid won't have one at all. And, we're not proposing that we pay Mrs. Jacket, she's volunteering at this time, just to kind of manage it, get it off the ground. So I would guess that the $100 for membership
Mhm.
is probably a reasonable ask.
She also has a family, and I don't like that. If she's going to do it, she should get paid to do it. So, if you're spending the time here with the kids outside of your salary, or make sure you're getting paid for that time, because that's time away from your family, and you need to be getting paid for that. So if that's something we decide on, she needs to be paid.
This check might get paid though for, they can charge it FFA,
Yeah.
as a club does.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's an extra duty assignment.
It's an extra duty assignment. Okay.
You're looking at them though, as our coaches get paid by the season, she's talking 3 seasons, you know, pay her 3 times what a coach gets for a season. So where are you gonna draw that line
I
at?
don't know, it's tough the way they roll, I'm talking 2 practices a week though too, or instead of 5 for a lot of sports. But I don't know how many competitions that they'll have.
You don't travel anywhere, do you? You do it all.
The only time we would travel is for state. And those are York, Concordia, and Winning.
You have to qualify for that, or is there?
You have to qualify for state.
And there's only one state tournament then?
Per season, yes.
Per season.
Per season.
And how long is it? Is it a couple days?
I think it's just like a Saturday.
It's just a Saturday?
It's the way I've understood it, yeah. But yes, the state competitions are the only competitions that are held, like, in person. Everything else is done from your home school.
Well, I can see the better players are gonna be very frustrated with our equipment, because they probably have better computers at home that they play on. And these are gonna be slow for them, and they're gonna be very happy about it if they wanna be good. So I can see down the road, real fast, they're gonna want us to upgrade computers so they can be competitive. You know, which is only fair if you're gonna do it.
You sure can table this, I mean, it doesn't need, nothing needs to be decided today. Is there a deadline for membership to be able to participate
I don't
this
think so,
fall?
because I know when I was talking, during the winter season, that we could have signed up if we got groups for spring, so I think as long as you're signed up. I think like beginning of August is when they start seeding like schools with everything, so I think there's a little bit of time.
Is it $100 for each season or a year?
It's $100 a year.
A year. Well, what if we just give them the okay for one season and reevaluate after one season, see how it's going? At another board meeting.
I think she's got enough interest, there's enough kids that wanna do it, that I'm okay with going ahead and
If
trying
they're
it
just
out.
looking, like Kyle said,
Trying it
looking
out.
for a space and supervision and $100, absolutely, then that's fine.
If you can get by, I mean, see how the computers work for you.
But if
It's
we're gonna
just
start
not
talking
work.
about budgeting public tax dollars anyway for coaching, right, and equipment, you know, creating basically some type of a war room or something or whatever, you know, it's gonna take some dollars anyway. And I wanna make sure that participation's there and there's a commitment on their end as there is from ours that match each other. Does that make sense? So, we're talking about just doing it for a year anyway, and then reevaluating it, see what the participation level is and how it goes. That's a no-brainer, if you ask me.
So can a guy find used computers that are cheap, that would have a lot more?
Well, it's fine refurbished computer, sure, and
Yeah.
cheaper,
Instead of
but
buying new
it's just a
ones.
matter of, are they gonna meet their needs or
Yeah.
not? And Your Tom can tell you that.
Right.
I'm sure they'd wanna consult with him a little bit, especially since they're gonna be on our network. Throughput, bandwidth, all that stuff too, is our infrastructure gonna be enough, our data network, you know, to go handle their needs? You're talking about some serious.
You're not aware of any other schools having problems with that type of thing?
Mm-mm.
Whatever,
No.
their network is. fine.
No, and I've talked to Tom a little bit, I didn't talk so much about that, but we did talk like what new devices would cost. And, 5 lower end gaming computers were right around $4,000.
Well, and then if we give them a year, they'll kind of see and make sure that it's not affecting the kids' grades negatively or anything like that. We give them a year,
See how it fits in the
see
budget
how it
too.
fits in the budget, see how it fits
Maybe
into
they
the
can fundraise
system.
like the FFA does.
Yeah.
That too, it's club sport, you're right, that's a good point, maybe some fundraising opportunities would be there for them too, so, yep, that
I
should.
think we've always said we try to give students all the opportunities that they want, or different opportunities they can't get somewhere else. I'm okay trying it.
And I am too. There's probably some kids that don't go out for any regular sports that are gonna wanna play, and maybe this will give them something that they can be, like in a team with a coach, a mentor, another in the room.
It's growing.
Yeah.
Has anybody contacted any schools and talked about the pros and cons that they see after having it in their school system for a year or two?
It's so new.
Yeah.
I think everybody's maybe, well, I say it's so new, but you'd know better than I, Melissa, you know how many, like how long Wayne has had an esports or ED.
I'll say, this is Wayne's first year.
They're still evaluating, I
And I
think.
talked to Jared, and he said they're actually, like in Omaha, they've been building e-sport classrooms, that it's gone so,
Yeah.
so there is a potential.
We just found a new use for the old building, Kyle.
Turn the lights out downstairs,
Yeah.
add some
There you
walls,
go.
that'll be great.
You got a couch already.
Yeah, couches are down
The
there.
latest technology.
Hang TVs on
And
the
the
pillars
oldest
down there.
building.
100-year-old.
Well, I'd make a motion to approve adding the sports club 712 for 2024-25 school year.
I'll second.
Moving second, and then.
Just
Okay,
clarify
sure.
though, we're running it, yeah, this is basically like a 1-year evaluation,
And for how
right?
much money?
We're gonna do it for $100 anyway, other than, basically, they're gonna have to show us anyway, the need is there, right? The participation is there.
I agree.
Anyway, so that we could properly do it right, anyway, in future seasons anyway, but this first season anyway, you know.
I hear you say $100 district investment, and it's Melissa during this first year. What needs some funds, so we should come to board and ask.
Mhm.
So,
I do want to say an evaluation, or, you know, as a, for the, to be evaluated for the 24-25
I
school.
think Melissa would probably come after each season and share with the board, maybe bring some kids.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be great.
24, 25.
That's all it is, yeah, the motion's only for 24-25, so.
And that, should we pay as a coach for that?
She'll be. what?
Should we pay it as a coach?
Not the first year.
That's a different
Not the first
conversation.
Different conversation.
We'll see how it goes, how much time you put in. You'll have to-
I think that's fair.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess I'll just leave the motion the same as it was on your notes. Move to second and expect to approve adding esports club 712 students for 24-25 school year. Myself, yes. Mike?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Chance?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Deb? Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you for doing all that work. and looking into it.
You're welcome.
Withdraw the comment about the $100 fee, the $100 fee, and give it a year. Did you withdraw that from your motion? Is that gonna be included, you want that included in the
You want the
motion?
$100
The
in
$100,
there.
and then you're gonna give it a year as a
Yes.
trial
Pay
period?
the
That's to be
$100.
included, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, move on to reports. Number 17, start with activities director report.
Speech state championship, you guys saw that, we're gonna have a pep rally here for them on Thursday at 2:45. Some recognition for all those kids in front of the student body, and parents and community members are welcome as well. Spring sports got their first competition in last week. Shot clocks did get approved yesterday, so we will have to do something with that to get those installed this summer. So I'll be getting some quotes together and putting some stuff together for you guys to bring to the next board meeting for that. Conference-wise, we finally have a name for it, the GNAC, Greater Northeast Activities Conference. We are gonna start in 24-25. That'll be varsity events only, and then we're gonna add the junior high events in 25-26. And then we're working on finishing a logo and our bylaws, we're almost done with those. And then I put in there the conference schedule for next year. So we will be hosting a cross-country invite for conference. So I gotta do some research on how to do that. And then we're also hosting art too, so yeah, just give me a paint machine, I'll walk around, make a nice line, it'd be great.
Why don't you just run around the school and see how far?
I can't run that far, that's a problem.
I can let you borrow one of my four-wheelers or something.
Perfect, I'll just hang off the side.
There you go.
So that's what we're looking at, and part of this was, providing opportunities for our kids. We're gonna play everybody within the conference, junior high wise, and then we're gonna end each season with a conference tournament for junior high as well.
Every sport.
Yep.
You know,
So,
football you won't do.
Football, we will not, but we're gonna do a junior high volleyball tournament, basketball tournament for each one, wrestling. I don't think we're gonna start with girls wrestling yet, but boys we will do, just until we get the numbers and then track, so. That way conference gets a little bit more experience at the junior high level.
When you say only varsity, like, so then there's no JV games during any of that, or there is, or?
No, we will, everything will be the same, we'll still do junior high, JV, all that, but what we did was make sure that all of our junior high seasons mirrored each other, so we're all going to play volleyball and football together at the same time. And then in the winter seasons where we have to move a lot of stuff, we're going to do girls basketball and boys wrestling before Christmas, and then flip-flop it and do girls wrestling and boys basketball after Christmas. So we're making sure all the schools are set the same way in that, so we can all compete against each other. And it's gonna take a year to get that done for the junior high boys.
So the other schools out of our conference kind of doing that same thing, so you can play those schools too, junior high.
Yeah, there's some other schools that are mirroring that as well, other conferences, so.
Like on your regular basketball night or whatever, you're still gonna have a reserve or JV team in a varsity or not?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Against the new teams?
Yep, it'll all be JV varsity nights.
And then, will there be like a JV football on Monday night, or do
Yep.
they not do that anymore?
Yep, so we're going to do junior high JV football all on the same night, and we're trying to match it with junior high and C-team volleyball as well. So junior high volleyball and football would go together and both play at 4 o'clock. Junior high, or JV football and C volleyball would go together and play at 6 o'clock.
Gotcha.
So those would all be on Monday night, all to the same school, so we're trying to
Trying to make it so logistically.
a little
it's
bit more
easier.
efficient.
All right.
So have the beach.
Yeah.
North. Like you, Melissa.
Yeah, that'll help a lot.
Okay, so, of course, did you ever do anything with Osmond or hear any more about that situation or anything with their basketball deal when they had asked to do something else?
They are still trying to work stuff out with Wausau, is what you talked about today. The last I talked to them was trying to get a bowling co-op possibly, and still asked them about girls wrestling. They just wanted to do, they do unified bowling, and that's what they wanna keep it at. And then girls wrestling wise, they just wanna keep that separate too, so.
Yeah.
So-
At this point.
They're still hoping to connect with Wausau. We're kind of their fallback, but they realize that, a co-op with Plainview is really not in the cards. That they did say, gosh, can we find a way, we'll have a girls' basketball team, not a boys' basketball team. Can we just play your girls in basketball for high school? So I said, Kyle, just, connect with their AD and see if we can work that out. It's more difficult than you think, and we may be a year away from that, being able to schedule an Osmond girls only high school basketball game. They don't have enough kids for bowling, they've got good lanes, and two of us together might get, they just don't have, they're just out of bodies.
So have we made any progress
Especially
with
the boys' issues.
Randy, the lanes down here, or is there anything?
Council has those conversations with Randy.
I need to go sit down and have a convo with him. I haven't went in and had an actual sit-down conversation with him,
Well,
so.
there's been a lot going on.
I'm a little pessimistic about the availability of lanes for our bowlers this winter, but Kyle's at the front point of that conversation and knowing whether we've got a facility for our kids. I won't be enthusiastic about putting our kids in a van to go to Osmond to practice every day, even though we haven't asked Osmond if that's gonna be an option. If we run out of lanes here in Plainview, I don't know what that means for a bowling team. That'll be board decisions, obviously, but, it's tenuous, I think, but,
So back to basketball again, if they don't have any boys, if they don't work with Wausau, and they only have a girls' team, are we gonna drop them the whole schedule then and pick up somebody else because the boys won't do it by that night? Or?
As for this year, we're not playing that.
We're already.
we'll play Randolph.
We
That's a
dropped that
date.
too.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if we had the OR date.
Nope, we added Hartington Cedar Catholic
Yeah.
that day, so.
Yeah, okay.
Cause we didn't gain anybody in the new conference that we don't already have. on
Correct,
schedule.
we already play all of them. The only one, we have a couple contracts going up next year with former Lewis and Clark schools that we could look at picking up Osmond, and I told Brian that, we would look at adding them for the 25-26 season.
Any other questions? Mr. Shelby? All right, thank you. Move on to principal's report.
If you look at our list of events this month, the only change that I have is that I thought the Pirate Branch was operational all month. And I found out that it is only, like, this coming Thursday is our last one. So we, have talked to Midwest Bank about some things that we're looking to add to the program next year. But as of this week, this is the last week of the branch for the year, and then we'll resume in the fall. But the March statistics are on the back for you. Our last community, day was with Michael's Foods, and that was our highest depositor day. We brought in the most money even with our depositors. Michael Foods donated $5 to every depositor that came that day. And any first timers, they gave $10 to, so it was a very generous donation on their behalf.
And they get, those that are depositors, they can cash out when they're seniors? Is that-
Sixth graders.
Sixth
When they
graders.
leave our building, we will write them a check for the amount that they've deposited over the years.
So I can't do it in high school? You're not running this one high school kids at all?
No.
Does that mean you want to?
Don't even think about it.
Sure, let's party. I can set it up. We can roll it over.
It's a lot of money, living in this short year.
Yeah.
That's pretty good interest if they donate $10 to your account, you wanna put in $5. About 15 cows.
And I know the kids have had fun doing it too.
The playground equipment's going up?
We hope later in the week. Yep, they told me that it would be at least Wednesday before they came back to start building.
What were the positive things about from the visit? From that, NDA,
Or Rule 10.
Euro 10, what was the
Yeah,
positive? Tell us
I'll-
the things that we could work on and things that they liked.
Yes, a lot of the things that so there was some pre-planning that we had to do just to submit documents to show, and a lot of it had to do with scheduling kinds of things. So, for example, looking at an elementary schedule on my end, we might say that it's small reading groups or whole reading groups, and they want us to be more specific with what is reading, where is PE and health. I mean, some of the technical terms that we use on scheduling are things that we have to look at adjusting for next year. They had some writing things that they wanted, and we just had to provide documentation for that. We have it, I just had to find specific examples of that and then submit it. But, I would say 85% of the feedback that we got was all positive, and it was just minor details that we have to provide evidence to support. One of the other things that they talked about specifically in the elementary, and I really think it probably applied to all of us, was they would like to see more character education happening all the way across the board in all classrooms. Like, we teach character education in our guidance classes, but is there anything happening within the classroom itself that would promote or encourage character education? So there are a couple things that we've been brainstorming. If you remember, we went to a mental health grant at the ESU, a team of us went. In that conversation, we talked about having more services for our social emotional students. And one of the things we talked about was just providing more character education. So that ball was already rolling from stuff we were doing in December, which we can easily just transition into the classroom.
And they talked about endorsement areas that were 98% endorsed in this building, and I think we were 100% in the elementary, other than we had one coded wrong counselor-wise. So they said it was almost unheard of that you have 100% in a high school that's everybody endorsed in one area. So we have one teacher teaching one class out of the endorsement area in this building. So
You're talking about teachers teaching what they do.
We're required to have 80% endorsed, we're at 98%, and he asked us like twice, you know,
Are you sure that's
He
accurate?
said, I don't see this. I said, well, part of it is we're fortunate enough to be able to hire teachers that are endorsed in the areas that we need teachers, so, so they're, you know, but they helped us identify the one place we were out of endorsement, nothing we can do about it, nothing we need to do about it, because we're still well above the 80%. And the things that we needed to fix was simply to identify what we're already doing. He said, we want to see that on your schedule. So he said, where do you teach health? We teach health here. Well, put PE/health on your high school schedule. So when you submit that to the NDE, we can see, because if it's written down, we assume it's being done. But then they asked Jen, send us some writing samples. So she put out to her teachers, send me some writing samples. And they probably flooded her with writing samples, and she sent them to Lincoln. And he puts them in a file and check the box.
We were a little uneasy about what it would entail. But in the end, it was, yeah, a very positive experience, and
He loved our libraries.
I gave Mrs. Yelp raving
He
reviews.
said, whoever your librarian is, tell her, because he needed some materials. Jen said, Mrs. Yoke, could you gather X, Y, and Z? And not only did she send what he wanted, he was impressed with what she sent. It wasn't just generic stuff, apparently.
Yeah.
So, and we said, she came to us as a social studies teacher and went and got her library certification so we could hire her. And, you know, sometimes converts make the best employees. But, so, yeah, it was a good conversation. We spent a little bit of time pre-populating about 30 folders that he sent us. He said to send me evidence in all these areas that went along with Rule 10. So I put in, you know, policy, many policies. Kyle and Jen put in, you know, okay, this is my area. I'll throw something in this folder. And he looked at them before he came to visit us. And yeah, it was a good experience. I mean, a little anxiety going in. Whenever anybody from the Department of Ed's coming out to check on you, there's always a little bit of anxiety, but.
So this is a one-time deal, first time it's ever happened, or gonna happen every so often, or?
Well, first time in 20 years.
And-
But they're hoping to do it on like a 10-year cycle from here on out. Good job.
When you guys say character building, what do you mean by that? Like just teaching kids to be good people, essentially?
yeah.
What was that behavioral thing that you guys just did in the elementary? Where training, was that the one you were talking about, the ESU? I thought you went for some training to implement a behavior program.
The one that I was referring to was the one that we went to at the ESU.
Yeah.
We had one come here.
They want to man that de-escalation training, so that's relationships with kids that are at
No,
risk.
yeah, that's not what I'm thinking of.
I'm kind of piloting a social emotional program right now with some kids. I mean, I don't know if you've heard them talk about that in any way.
No, a couple of years ago, I thought.
Kind of character count.
We went to MTSS, and did behavioral selective violence, but. well, thank you.
Good job.
The President's report, just wanted to say congrats to the speech team, and also wanted to send out, shout out to Reagan Choate for state FFA president.
Oh, yeah.
You guys didn't see that on Twitter here last week, so it's kind of a big deal.
Was that first one since 1997?
97.
Who was that?
I don't know, I didn't ask.
I was told first one since 1960 something, so I'm
Oh.
not sure.
Now I don't know.
But, yeah.
Do you know?
First officer, I think, since 97, first president since
Okay.
67.
Who was that, do you know? Who that president was back in the 60s?
I think it's the father of somebody sitting up there.
We're not sure on that. I know he was an officer, yeah.
That's
I
pretty
wasn't aware he
cool.
was state president.
That's pretty cool.
That's
We
what I
don't
was
have a
told.
picture with Rick.
That's what I was-
Have to remind you.
That's
Judy,
right.
Judy
That was
doesn't
your
keep
dad? I
that
thought you-
picture up on the mantle of him and his.
Yeah, we have a
or
picture of it, so
blue.
I've seen a picture of him.
That's pretty impressive.
Oh,
Well, that's fun. Absolutely.
Yeah, congrats to Ray.
That's all I got. Superintendent.
Okay, in about 3 months' time, that ESSER 3 will go away, because we will expend those funds on summer school, and then ESSER will be done, will be sunset. So, legislative update, I thought I'd have a fresh report today from the unicameral, and I didn't get one. If you're paying attention, you'd notice in the World Herald or the monthly paper, talk about particularly LB 1331 and LB 388. Those are the huge school funding and property tax bills that are supposed to work together. So 1331, it looks like it will pass, but it can't operate really without 388. It's the companion bill. 388 is the property tax reduction bill that is really being pushed by the governor and by Senator Linehan. So they've got a few days to get that done. It could happen. If it doesn't get done, governor is likely to call a special session, because he is heck bent on getting it done one way or another. You start at 45% reduction, it could be as low as 30% reduction in property taxes. You guys probably know better than I do and follow that as close as anybody, but, so I'm trying to watch that carefully. There's a few other bills. The Safe Sports and Spaces bill didn't pass.
Yep, I saw that.
Not that that would have changed much of what anybody does out in the rural area. We'll still operate the way we operate. It would formalize biological sex participation in sports, biological sex use of restrooms and locker rooms. It's a non-issue, has been a non-issue here. It would give you some statutory foundation to say you can't use whatever bathroom you want to use or participate in.
That's one that I was following, and it seems like it will return
Oh,
in
yeah.
2025.
It will come back.
So to continue the conversation,
Yeah.
but.
So
I
it
don't
didn't
think
pass.
there's
I think a lot of
anything-
people thought maybe it would, but it just got filibustered again,
Yep.
and it's fine. We weren't, gosh, we really need this because we've got issues in our school.
Well, I think there's some schools that have adopted a policy in Norfolk, but I'm not sure what they are. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, I've seen Norfolk's policy. It is fine. I don't know if this would have helped formalize Norfolk's or would it give them a more statutory or legal grounding for it. So they may have more of they certainly do have more of an issue or concern maybe with kids of the different biological sex wanting to use a particular locker room or so do we need to think about that and be more proactive? Maybe so, that might be something for the board or policy committee to start to think about, ask for a sample from NASB or KSB or put something together, whatever. Look at Norfolk's policy. I don't know of any other small rural schools that are saying, ooh, Norfolk did it, we better do it. So things kind of go from Omaha out to the rural area and maybe hit Norfolk and Columbus first, and then they kind of feed out to the small schools, whether we think that's necessary or not. But that one kind of got lost. I haven't paid as much attention to that, but I was surprised to see its fate. With regard to our budget for this next year, there's just honestly some unknown about whether 1331 doubles the amount of foundation aid. So we went from about 30,000 to $500,000 this school year. 1331 will take us to a full $1 million in state aid. Now they'll take that though, and cut it off of our base growth and our property tax levying authority, which is designed to drive down property taxes. So it's about dollar for dollar. The state's gonna give you this money, you ask for that amount less from your property owners. So that's the way, it's quite simply that they hope it'll work. Well, if 388 doesn't get passed, just don't, if it does get passed, you know, are they gonna backfill that enough to where we can still count on the same amount of funding? Because we're gonna have a somewhat significant increase in personnel expenses, which is where most of your budget goes. There's just indecision. I'm trying to stay in touch with the Department of Ed as much as I can. They don't know what's gonna happen, nor do they wanna tell local school districts, this is what you need to plan for, because they don't know what the unicameral might do. As they're negotiating 388, what they're talking about today might be completely different tomorrow, and they could retroactively. You remember the vote to go 7% more on base growth last year that we had, about August maybe? That amounted to almost $450,000 in extra availability. They may hard cap that and say, no, we're gonna cap you, and we're not gonna give you the option to increase your cap. Okay, because the governor wasn't happy last year that so many school districts, as we did, gave ourselves that little bit of flexibility just in case. He said, you take this if you need it, if you have some circumstances that require it. That was his intent, and school district said, well, if it's available, we're gonna give ourselves that little cushion just in case. That they can retroactively take away. So I only have some anxiety about what's gonna come out of this. And if he calls a special session, it's gonna be even later. We could know on Friday. It's Friday the session ends. Did it pass or not? And if it didn't, is the governor gonna call a special session for them to come and still try and get it done later, which is worse because it leaves us more in limbo. So having said all this, we had a resignation. So your FTE, which you approved last month at 34, we now have 33. And that was an ESSER funded position. And so I don't think it's necessarily a slam dunk that we should replace that position, because we have a bit of an unclear financial position for next fiscal year. So it would not be unreasonable to not fill that position.
How many kids going into first grade?
25. Currently in first grade would be going into second. So we're a two-track school.
Oh, she's a second grade teacher.
We're two-track, she's a first grade teacher,
Okay.
but we've got 2 teachers in second grade. We would move that second grade teacher down to first grade, and we'd stay at two-track school, K1.
Say the number again going into second grade.
25.
25 and 25?
We have 25 first graders right now would be going into second grade, so that would be the affected grade. So right now we have second grade split, they come together at third. So, and it's the best money you spend to keep those kids split as they're learning to read. It's the best money you spend, is getting kids to reading level by grade 4. So it's the best money you spend. I just don't, I'm not 100% slam dunk this extra $100,000 for a teacher can and should be spent, because we are a property tax rich district, and they are looking at making fundamental, generational, serious changes to the school funding formula, which doesn't automatically, it doesn't mean devastation for us by any means, but it's uncertain. It's uncertain for us. So we have a little luxury of time. It's not June. Now, teachers aren't a dime a dozen either. So what I think I'm saying is, by the end of the week, I think I'll know I have a clear idea and confidence that we can afford to replace this teacher. At which time we'll advertise. We can advertise all we want. We can take applications all we want. We can even interview all we want. But we can't offer without your authority, even though you gave it to us last month, right? So I just want to stay in touch with you. I'll push information out to you over the course of the week. And, you know, maybe it will be next month's meeting where it's clear and we ask you, yes or no, do you want us to fill this position? Or do we wanna reduce our FTE and look at $100,000 savings to the district? And at what expense would that be to our students? Okay, so we haven't seen anything like this with regard to school funding. Probably no superintendent who's currently serving as superintendent, no matter how long, has seen this. And I'm not saying it's bad by any means. It's that property tax relief has been discussed, as you guys know, for decades. But property tax relief, but we're gonna increase sales tax. I mean, it's just a tax shift. We're still gonna fund schools, but they are gonna, I think, try to squeeze schools. And that's not unreasonable for them to, even though we don't waste money in our schools, we're pretty efficient, more so than I think a lot of people maybe give us credit for. So that's all that. We talked about the Rule 10 compliance visit. Wanted to give you a report up on our snow days. We're good on instructional hours, even though we've had 6 snow days, 2 late starts, 2 early dismissals. We're still good. We don't need any more. School Board Candidate Workshop is in Ord on July 11th. It's in Ord. This would be for non-incumbent candidates for school board, which we have several. So I did ask NASB, can't you provide one of those in Norfolk? Marcia said she would talk to Sharon and see. If they get one scheduled for Norfolk, I would sure love for the board to encourage our non-incumbent candidates who have filed for election to attend that meeting. It wouldn't be out of the question to say, let's go to Ord on July 11th, but I sure hope they, and I don't know for sure why, Norfolk is the best place in northeast Nebraska to host something like that. So I'll let you know if we maybe have that opportunity. The Jay Martin presentation, he'll come back and do a round 2 and maybe round 3 and maybe round 4. We had 4 of 6 board members attend. That was great. Thank you for taking time to do that. It's a discouraging message to hear. But I think one that we need to continue to maybe bring back to our families, to our community, on being digitally wise and safe, and what responsibility we maybe have as a school district to help our kids. We teach some digital citizenship. It's not as maybe purposeful and intentional as it can or should be, but and maybe that's more so with regard to using our school devices than with your own device on your own time. How much time do we have, given all the other great list of Rule 10 requirements of things we have to teach, to be intentional and purposeful about students protecting themselves from the influences that are within their self?
Will you be back next
We haven't
year?
scheduled anything, but he sure said invite me back, and so I would guess that during next school year, we'll have Jay back again. Loves to get out into the schools, and he's just really, really good, really, engaging, captivating.
So I'm gonna back up a little bit and talk about Norfolk and their new policy. Have they been challenged by anybody on that yet?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Because I remember talking to Bobby a couple of years ago about doing a policy. He says, go ahead, we'll be glad to represent you. We'll
Yeah.
take you to court. So,
Yeah.
but things are changing since then too.
Yes.
Well, I think as our district grows, it's good to have that just down there and say, this is our policy here. We have no tolerance for that, or however we decide to proceed if we do make a policy.
But I'd rather
People
see the
understand.
state act on it first.
Absolutely,
than-
I agree with
than
that.
the other.
That's why I was watching it so close.
Yeah. Because NASB would have pushed one out to us had this passed, is a new statutorily based
Right.
policy on how to treat biological.
As you said, those groups, just Google minutes. If there's anything in their conversation whatsoever, they're gonna check it out. If you're doing something, they're gonna come after you, expose you.
I think if Norfolk would have been challenged, we'd know about it. That'd been front page news
Yeah.
for days on end probably, but.
How long ago?
Has that been a year?
Yeah,
Oh, it has.
we had
Oh, okay.
this
Yeah.
conversation last year. It's been a long time. So.
Okay, that's all I have for you.
Okay, well, that's all we got on the agenda tonight, so, thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you.